You're a coward, Mark, a hustler with a smile who can't even keep his bills straight. Ethan says, loud enough for the whole house to lean in. And a dozen forks freeze midair at my sister Susan's Thanksgiving table while my daughter Lily's face goes still like a photograph. And I know in the second before my throat tightens that everything in me is on display, in the one place I swore I'd never be exposed. My name is Mark Daniels. I'm 42 from Akron, Ohio. And I'm not used to being stripped like this, not in front of the people whose approval plugs the holes in my confidence. I say this once, the words landing soft and precise because I have to get them right, because names settle things for me. I keep one quiet thing they'll never think to delete, an archive so boring and thorough, nobody would call it evidence. And that thought is a small, steady ember under the blaze of humiliation while footsteps and murmurs ripple through the room. The house smells like turkey and coffee, and the cinnamon sour snap of my mother's pecan pie cooling on the windowsill is cracked top a family trademark, the way she always broke the first slice for whoever arrived last, and that pie sits on the ceramic turkey platter my grandmother brought from Tennessee, the one with the thin hairline crack we joke about every year. I set my eyes on it because it is the smallest piece of home that hasn't been turned into someone else's trophy. Ethan's smirk is the loudest thing in the room. He stands with his phone flipped open, the screen already bright, and I can see the angle of his wrist, the practiced way he invites an audience not to listen, but to judge. People look at him as if he's delivering the only honest line of the night. My sister grips her napkin, embarrassingly still, like she worries some gesture will topple the china. Lily's knuckles go white on the chair's arm, and I try to meet her eyes, but the room feels thick with every unpaid bill I've ever swallowed down, and every time I chose overtime over presents. Ethan says, "You left us holding the hook, Mark," and names my small company and the missed payrolls like wounds he is rubbing salt into, and everyone hears the accusation that I've been skimming, that my paycheck is grease on my hands. I don't answer them because answers will sound like excuses, and excuses are better aired in a lawyer's office than in the din of family. My mouth opens only to measure the shock on Lily's face so I can shape the apology she doesn't ask for. Instead, I fold my hands and hold still, letting the room write their verdict, as if my silence is confession. The waitress from the diner across town, Grace, who once said I'd run this place into something respectable, stays by her husband's side, eyebrows raised. She knows small businesses and the smell of kitchens that run on overtime. Todd, my old friend from high school, who still wears that same college hoodie, gives me a look that is halfway pity and halfway calculation, like he's mentally placing a bet on how quickly I'll recover. Even Susan, who raised me and still memorizes the way I chew when I'm nervous, bites her lip and fights her instinct to say my name in defense. The phone in Ethan's hand is a loaded gun. He flicks it to record while he pinches his mouth into neat performative cruelty, and the little red dot on his screen becomes a bright, nauseous promise that his humiliation will not stay inside this living room. He pushes his advantage, throws in details about a bounced check, a vendor who hasn't been paid, a complaint filed under my business's name, and people lean forward because this is better than conversation. This is confirmation. Somewhere between the mashed potatoes and the starched tablecloth, I decide I won't run. Not tonight. Not with Lily watching as if I'm a story about to be ended in one cruel paragraph. I stand up because pretending to retreat would be to accept the verdict. I fold my napkin into a square and let a breath out like a lever being pulled. I tell myself a line I will cling to when doubt claws at me later. Quiet things are accounts waiting for the right hand to find them, and I have kept accounts. That sentence sits in me like a talisman, my one neat phrase of philosophy tonight. Then folds away as the holiday chatter resumes, and Ethan grins like a man who has already cashed the check of my dignity. He holds up his thumb to scroll, and the living room is a theater. His video will be half a minute of me laughing last winter about a misreported invoice, stripped of context and re-edited so that my laughter appears like callousness. That video will travel. I know how these things go. I used to fix websites and manage digital menus, so I'm not blind to the way a clip can be sharpened into a weapon. I glance at Lily, and her eyes are glassy with the sharp, bright hurt of a kid who believes in her father like an anchor, and I can't stand to let Ethan hand her one more shard. My hands itch with the urge to reach for the chipped ceramic turkey platter and throw it through the phone. The absurdity of violence against a device momentarily makes me laugh short, surprised, but I don't. I can't give Ethan the satisfaction of a reaction he can monetize. Instead, while everyone's still listening to his final flourish, a quote from a vendor about unpaid labor that is cruelly framed. I slide my phone from my pocket and open a note app where I've kept a log of invoices, dates, text messages, and scanned receipts, the dry, precise map of the last 2 years. The habit that used to make my wife roll her eyes, "Mark, you save everything," now feels like a ledger of salvation. I scroll enough to see the timestamps, the tiny proof that I have been meticulous not for pride but to survive. Nobody expects that. Nobody thinks the guy in jeans who smells slightly of fryer oil is the same one who once reconciled accounts for a midtown caterer. My secret advantage isn't flashy. It's the documentation of my life in safe, boring places, scanned backups, cloud folders labeled in a way only I understand, emails saved with original headers, bank statements annotated with little notes like paid 11/12 vendor. That's the ember I keep feeding while platters are passed and everyone clucks at the same well-worn family pieties. The ember grows into a plan, not a scream, and I tell myself under my breath a second line I cannot afford to forget. People who clap for shame forget how to check the fine print. The room tilts with the rest of the dinner. Laughter returns in thin, brittle slices. Susan clears her throat and tries to bridge the smooth gap with small talk about the Browns game, but the words stick like cold gravy. Lily reaches for my sleeve when someone moves a chair, and I let her because touch is truth tonight. I let Ethan finish his set, the piece de resistance of a man who has learned that humiliation is currency, and then I follow him outside like a man walking toward a crossroads without looking back. The porch is bitter from the night air. My breath fogs, and the neighbor's dog barks like a metronome. He closes his phone with the casual arrogance of someone who believes a viral moment is as heavy as change. And I watch him, really watch him, the way a man takes inventory before a storm, and I catalog. He has the arrogance of someone who never chewed on the edges of consequences, who thinks social bones are unbreakable. "You always were better at looking busy than being useful," he says, and his thumb massages the ring of the phone, like an owner of a thing he thinks he can sell. I tell him calmly, "You've always liked making people choose between the gloss and the grit," and my voice doesn't tremble. I tell myself a line sharp and fatal in its clean truth. Details are the language people forget to read, and I press it into myself like a legal stamp. He laughs once, short, like a man who has timed applause, and then the smoke of somebody's tailpipe curls past us, and the night is suddenly thin with possibility. I walk back in carrying the image of the ceramic turkey platter, of the pecan pie cooling, and of Lily's face, and I start to map what to do with the archive on my phone. I will not be loud. I will be precise. I will use the small, tedious things he assumes are meaningless. Invoices, email headers, time-stamped texts, a canceled check with a fingerprint smudge. He has staked his power on spectacle. My power is paper and pixels saved in a way only a careful man could love. The turkey platter waits, the pie waits, and the living room keeps breathing like a thing unaware it's a battleground. I sit at the edge of the table when the dishes begin their slow migration to the kitchen, and I take in the looks, the small betrayals that are gossip. My plan wraps itself slowly around me, exposure that begins as a whisper, then a screenshot, then a leak, then a legal nudge in the right place. I don't know all the moves yet. I only know I'm not walking away with my dignity in a paper bag. The ember flares because even in humiliation I am not finished, because lineage and laundry lists of responsibility are heavier than fame. I will be methodical because I am tired of improvisation being mistaken for incompetence. I will be louder with proof than he has been with mockery, and I feel the first real pulse of clarity like a new beat in my ribs. The laughter dissipates into the clink of cutlery and the scrape of chairs, and I move without announcing my plan, because people rush to fill silences with their own assumptions while I am busy making evidence. I take Lily aside, and she presses her forehead to my shoulder for a moment like a kid who wants an ally before a fight. I taste the coffee on her breath and promise no fireworks, only that I will fix this. She nods, small and stunned, and when I look at her, I feel the weight of the next year's holiday tables pressing down. Back at the kitchen, I open the little safe under the counter where Susan keeps extra napkins and a stack of usurped receipts. The safe is mostly decorative, a little metal box that used to hold mementos, but I keep a backup thumb drive inside because I have always been the kind of man to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. I'd plug it into my laptop at home later that night and watch my life in rows and columns. Dates, vendor names, deposit confirmations, and a trail of payments that prove I paid the caterer and that someone else rerouted funds after a misapplied endorsement. The evidence isn't clean in the way a thief imagines. There are shadows and gray. There's the kind of mess that lives in real finances, but it's enough. I read the texts between Ethan and a man named Malik, the new bookkeeper he hired last spring. They start polite and then curve into italicized anger. Then lines like "clerical errors are fixed, and we'll move the rest under your name." There's a screenshot of a bank transfer, timestamped precisely at 2:13 a.m. on a night I remember being at the diner, and the memo line reads, "Settlement for Daniel's Catering, finalize." There's another text where Ethan brags about buying a used van in Cleveland and writes, "Mark never checks the LLC filings. We own the line." The receipts and the way the emails thread give me the shape of the theft. Not a swipe of petty cash, but a slow siphon disguised as bookkeeping. My chest clenches because this isn't just money. It's the proof that my hard nights, my second shifts, my calloused hands have been traded. The ember becomes a thing of cold focus. I draft a single plan that is legal and sharp, a public correction seated at the same platforms Ethan is using for his smear. Screenshots presented with timestamps, emails with full headers showing who initiated transfers, and a request filed by me to the bank demanding a fraud review based on an irregular endorsement and an unnotarized transfer. I will not assault his character with lies or theatrics. I will force institutions to do what institutions must. Check the boxes. In bed that night, Lily sleeps with her phone face down as if to guard that little square of her world, and I think about how small things become weapons. I draft an email to Susan and CC, the city's small business bureau. Clear, factual, no flourishes, but with attachments that make a body of evidence. I upload the vendor invoices with original PDF headers that cannot be forged without leaving fingerprints on the metadata. I send a carefully captioned screenshot to a local reporter I know from my community board. Her name is Maria. She covered our town hall meetings, and she replies within minutes asking for a statement. The reporter's reply is the kind of small miracle that tastes like possibility. She says she wants to look into the discrepancy between Ethan's viral clip and the documents I sent. The small public thing I feared, being miscast in a viral clip, starts to tilt back toward the light because I feed it slow, boring evidence a machine cannot ignore. I also reach out to a lawyer, Carter Blake, a clean-suited man with a cigarette voice, who tells me that corporate filings are full of technicalities and that one wrong notarization is a whole world of reversal if the bank is willing to look. Carter points out a clause in the operating agreement of our family LLC. Any transfer of membership interest requires written consent and a file with the county clerk within 30 days. Ethan filed a document but failed to have it notarized and didn't obtain 2 independent witness signatures required by our old agreement. It is the kind of thing a man who wants a headline forgets, Carter says, and he smiles with the professional hunger of someone who loves the smell of clauses. That sentence lodges in my mind as a new, quiet philosophy. The law loves the details the arrogant ignore, and it becomes a tool as much as an idea. I send the papers to the bank and the county clerk with polite, unassuming language and ask for an audit of the transfer. I also post a measured thread on my own modest social account, not a diatribe, but a clean set of screenshots with annotations that a layperson can follow. The first wave of comments is cruel and small, but then Maria picks up and posts an article. Local business owner says viral clip misrepresents him. Documents show disputed transfers. That headline is a pebble that starts a ripple. People who liked Ethan's clip begin to read the attached PDFs and see the timestamps, the bank memos, and the email headers. They see that somebody working behind a fryer kept copies of everything. The viral dynamics shift because facts are boring until they are not, and then they are the only thing left standing. I watch the comments under Ethan's original video sour as screenshots circulate, this time pointing at the man filming rather than me. Someone posts a recording Malik sent to a friend bragging about cleaning up the books, and the clip has background noise, the ring of a bar, the low drone of someone who thinks they are private. That clip spreads and the tone changes. Ethan is no longer merely an accuser, but a possible accomplice to a financial maneuver he gleefully orchestrated. The public humiliation he initiated turns in the wind. I call my bank, and the fraud department puts a hold on the contested accounts while they review, and the customer service rep reads the transactions in concrete, mechanical reliance on their rules. The transfer lacks the notarization stamp. The deposit was rerouted through an account that does not match our LLC tax ID. The bank's compliance officer, a woman named Denise, who sounds exactly like a person who likes to be right, tells me they will reverse suspected fraudulent transfers pending review. The reversal is a small, cold victory, but a victory nonetheless. It feels like the world is obeying instructions once given the right evidence. I have set a trap of paperwork and photographs and public pressure, and the first teeth of it close around a lie. Ethan's face, when he learns the bank has frozen the accounts, is a map of surprise and the first wetness of regret. He looks like a man who miscalculated the shape of his own audacity. He calls Susan and leaves a voice message that pings on her phone like a guilty animal, and she plays it for me with a hand that trembles. In the message, his voice is tight, defensive, and small. The kitchen light leaks out into the night as if showing us to ourselves, and the pecan pie in the window gleams like an altar. I sit on the back steps while Susan scowls at a phone and Lily texts in the other room, and I feel the pulse of something enormous and quiet. The way careful preparation can turn evening gossip into actionable truth. My small, boring archive has begun to do the work I could not do with a yell. It demands Institutions Act. The law and public appetite taste the same thing, evidence, and once delivered, they can be more brutal than a viral condemnation. The ember I've kept alive all these years is now steady heat, and for the first time since Ethan's sentence in the living room, I sleep with something that looks like confidence. The next morning, the town's coffee shops hum with the news and the local paper runs Maria's piece, with a photo of the ceramic turkey platter in the background of my dining room, as though the family symbol had become the headline's stage prop, and people nod as if they always suspected there was more. Ethan's video still circulates, but now comment threads carry screenshots of bank memos and text messages that show him orchestrating the redirection of funds. His supporters go quiet when the operating agreement clause is quoted in full by a Twitter user who is a paralegal in Columbus. That clause, tiny and archaic, reads, "Transfers of membership interest require notarized documentation and filing with the county within 30 days of execution." Ethan didn't have the notarized documentation. He had the arrogant belief that showmanship could replace process. The legal clause bites like a cold, indifferent animal. It is procedural justice, not spectacle, the precise machinery of paper-beating bravado. Maria buys me a coffee and sits across from me in the diner, and between sips she says, "You didn't post the angry video." I tell her, "Anger is cheap. Receipts are not," and she smiles because she knows how rare it is to find restraint. She runs another piece that quotes the county clerk, confirming that a filed document was returned for missing notarization, and the clerk's office posts a public note. Any filings lacking required notarization are void under state administrative code. The public's narrative shifts further. The man who roasted me on a phone now looks like the man who forgot to dot an official I. People love to watch someone caught by their own laziness, and that's the kernel of satisfaction that makes this work. A viral chat shows Ethan texting Malik saying, "We can bury his name if we move fast," and people laugh at the hubris. The financial institution sends an initial letter notifying Ethan that disputed transfers will be reversed pending investigation, and he hits back with a frantic post claiming victimhood. He posts a screenshot he says proves his innocence, but it's a crudely edited image whose metadata betrays the manipulation. Someone points that out in the comments, and the post loses credibility like a candle losing wax. My own social thread gains traction as people repost the emails and the cancelled check with a fingerprint I had photographed when the vendor complained. The same fingerprint that matches Ethan's thumb in a picture I later find on his social profile at a tailgate. It is not vindictive. It is methodical. An overlooked photograph becomes a link. I watched the crowd shift, the way the narrative rotates like a slowly turning head, and I feel something like a measured satisfaction. Susan's house becomes quieter. She calls Ethan to talk, and in the conversation his voice is thin with excuse. "It was only a move, Susan. We were rearranging the books." And she, fiercely maternal and still proud in a way that aches, tells him he messed with the wrong ledger. "You didn't notarize," she says, almost laughing at the absurdity of how the bureaucratic smallness of a signature can undo a man's grand plan. The conversation ends with a slamming sound in the receiver and the crack in the family dynamics widening to a canyon. Lily reads the articles on her phone and looks at me with something like relief. The public record is on my side and the private pain remains. But the fight is not purely public. I meet with Carter, who points out a second move. Ethan's claim to our catering line rests on a supposed assignment of trade name that he filed with the state, but the assignment lacks the original invoice that proves consideration. In other words, he didn't actually show he paid anything for the trade name. It's an empty form. Carter tells me we can petition to set aside the assignment on grounds of lack of consideration and misrepresentation, and that the county will entertain such a petition if we provide the original vendor receipts and emails showing the timeline. "They love details," Carter says again, and that phrase has become the rhythm of our work. We thread together a petition that reads like a forensic report rather than a personal plea. It takes time, and time is a slow war. But each small win, a frozen account, a county clerk's note, a reposted screenshot, pulls the threads of embarrassment from Ethan's neck and tightens them into a rope of consequences. I don't gloat in public. My satisfaction is private, practical, the satisfaction of someone who watched his life get cataloged and then used in his defense. The town's barbers and auto shops start nodding at me in the mornings, and at the diner where I still do weekends, people buy me coffee and say small consoling things under their breath. I collect the evidence as if assembling a model, precise and polite. The reporter's phone rings with anonymous tips, and one of them is a recording of Malik admitting to a friend that we moved it through a shell account. The word shell sounds like a hard clack on a kitchen tile, and that recording breaks the last of Ethan's defenders into a whisper. The social sensation turns into a municipal one. Local officials who had been on the fence feel pressure to act. I file formal complaints with the state's attorney general and hand over scanned bank statements. The attorney general's office, which usually deals with interstate frauds and large consumer scams, takes an interest because of the clear misrepresentation and the public nature of the allegations. Their involvement is a new shade of seriousness. Bureaucratic engines grind slowly but inevitably. The legal and public machinery begins to hum with the same frequency, and Ethan's bravado looks smaller every day under fluorescent lights and in the cool language of subpoenas. He posts another video with angry energy, but the comments are clipped by legal citations and screenshots. His crowd thins. I go to work as usual, flipping burger grates and answering phone calls, and the routine becomes a metronome that steadies me, a background to the growing storm. The pecan pie sits uneaten in Susan's kitchen more nights than not, a quiet constant of the domestic side of our war. I catch myself sometimes staring at the cracked ceramic turkey platter as if it is a ledger, as if the crack maps the fault line in our family, and I vow in small private sentences that the last move will be precise, that the platter will bear witness rather than be a casualty. People begin to call Ethan by his first name in tones that are no longer performative but investigative. His social shield thins. The legal machinery is not extravagant justice. It's prosaic, technical, procedural, and that is precisely why it hums with authority. The grind of it is satisfying. It is the exact opposite of Ethan's spectacle. I don't feel triumphant in a tinsel way, only a deep, solid relief that the truth has allies more patient than outrage. I sit sometimes at the bar after the dinner rush, drink a beer that tastes of hops and working hands, and I let the city's hum remind me that most victories are not dramatic finales, but small, overlooked reversals polished by calendars and signatures. I whisper another line to myself. Truth is a slow machine that runs on receipts, and it keeps me steady like a strap in a pickup truck. The noose I'm tightening is not the thing people imagine. It's a web of details only a careful man collects, a net of deadlines and filings and public records, and it is tightening. The pressure mounts in small bureaucratic clicks. The bank sends a formal notice that the reverse transfers will remain reversed pending completion of a fraud investigation. The county clerk files a motion to invalidate Ethan's claim to the trade name because of lack of consideration. Malik is subpoenaed for his role as bookkeeper, and his face in court videos is pale and twitching as he recites a timeline that implicates Ethan. The news picks up the clerk's formal note, and headlines change their tone from entertainment to accountability. Ethan, who once smiled like a man who owned the room simply because he spoke first, now looks at the world as a man who needs witnesses. He calls me and leaves a message that smells of panic. "Mark, we can fix this," he says, but in the sentence there is nothing like apology. I don't call back because he doesn't deserve a performance from me. I let the law and the public do the talking. The county clerk schedules a hearing where the two of us will be at the same table with our documents and our witnesses. Susan texts me that she is scared and angry and she wants to be present. And Lily says she will come to the hearing because she wants to see her dad stand up in a room where facts weigh more than noise. The hearing room is a low, fluorescent box of a place, and when we sit, the clerk's assistant passes us a stack of copies. The ceramic turkey platter feels very far away. Carter sits on my right with his legal pad, and he taps a pen like a metronome that counts the steps of our small choreography. Ethan sits on my left, jaw clenched, surrounded by the hum of an unraveling echo. We present our documents with a cold, precise respect for procedure. My invoices in neat piles, the bank's memos with original headers and IP addresses, the email chains showing who authorized what. The clerk reads the documents with the kind of librarian satisfaction only someone who loves order can possess, and as she flips through pages, a small smile crosses her face at the tiny bureaucratic crime, the missing notarization. The law isn't sentimental. It is attentive to boxes ticked and signatures witnessed. When the clerk rules that the assignment of the trade name is void for failure to meet statutory requirements, the room breathes in unison like a living thing released from tension. It is not dramatic in the way a movie would stage it. It is a quiet, decisive unhooking of a lie. Ethan's face shuts down in a way that looks like a man being unmade small, private, unglamorous. He opens his mouth and says something about technicalities and getting lawyers, but the clerk's ruling is already a blade cutting the fabric. The legal victory is procedural. It is the kind of undoing that is clean because someone failed to dot their I's. People who had once laughed now look at him as someone who misread a manual. The technicality is not poetic in itself, but it gives me a kind of peace that is both sharp and domestic. The world has mechanisms, and they work when someone otherwise foolish enough to rely on spectacle forgets to follow the rules. I return to the diner the next morning, and the regulars stand to clap in a way that is awkward but real. They hand me slices of pie on paper plates with little napkins already folded. as if the community needs small rituals to process what has happened. The pie tastes like victory flavored with sugar and the soot of late nights. It is not a triumphal meal, only the comfort of something familiar consumed in a new light. Ethan's social accounts begin to show the cracks of a man losing his narrative. His posts are fewer and his supporters thinner. The press keeps a drip of interest because the county's ruling opens the path for a civil suit about the diverted funds, and prosecutors begin asking questions about patterns they previously missed. It is a slow, mechanized unmaking of a lie I never thought I'd see undone. I don't shout. I make phone calls with Carter, I answer reporters in measured prose, and I keep the ledger open because the work demands more than emotion. I see Lily at the diner when school lets out and she wears a sweatshirt with a band I loved in college. She hugs me like someone who has been waiting to see their parents stand up and is now allowed to. I have scars from this fight, an ache behind my ribs where trust used to fold, but they are not crippling. The life lesson that gathers itself into a plain shape at the very end comes like the last piece of pie on a paper plate. Keep the receipts, and don't let anyone tell you that spectacle replaces paperwork. The finality of procedural justice is not cinematic. It's municipal, necessary, and honest. I walk away from the hearing with no fanfare, a bit older, and with the knowledge that pain and patience are both ways to measure courage. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It helps us share more true stories like this.